Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and happy Wednesday morning. That's when we're doing this podcast. I'm joined today by Joe Mack in New York. Joe, good morning, and I don't know what to call it. Happy Wednesday, I guess.
Yeah, happy hump day. I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to this weekend's games, Jim. It's great that the college football is coming back little by little. It was really nice having the SEC back last Saturday, and a pretty nice NFL card for Week 4. So I'm sure we're going to digest a lot of it and everything. But yeah, it's a great thing. Obviously, the NFL's got some other concerns. The Tennessee Pittsburgh game has been moved back to either Monday or Tuesday because of COVID. You and I spoke during the summer and thought it would be next to impossible, I think, that the NFL would make it through without any issues. And so they have some here on their plate, and they're going to have to deal with it. But outside of that, like I said, a nice, really competitive menu for Sunday in the NFL. And it's obviously, with all the points being scored, we're off to a rollicking start in the NFL.
Well, talk about rollicking. We have, a marquee matchup Thursday night. I'm kidding, of course. I'm not sure who's going to tune into this except for some bettors that have their money on it. But not a great game. Excuse me.
No, not at all. I mean, you and I, before the show started, were just touching on the woes of the New York area football teams, and this is a very bad Jet team. They're hosting the Broncos. Broncos obviously just announced that Brett Rippon will be their starting quarterback here, meaning they're already to their third quarterback, 4 weeks into the season. This kid's highly inexperienced, had a nice college career, but we don't know what to expect from it. And the Denver team is a bit of a mess. They really were non-competitive for the most part against Tom Brady and the Bucs last week. And the Jets, again, I'll repeat what I've said in the past. I mean, their drafting in the recent years has been so bad. It's all caught up to them. They gave an arm and a leg to move up in the draft a couple of years back to get Sam Darnold, the quarterback out of USC. And, part of it's his fault. Part of it is management's fault. This is already his third different offensive coordinator and coach. And, they put him through too much of the ringer here. But he's also regressed. I mean, he's made some bad passes. His decision-making for a guy third year in the league has not been good. And I started to feel sorry for him last week in that game against the Colts. I mean, he threw a pick six where his receiver ran a different route than he expected. Then he threw really a devastating end zone interception. The Jets had a nice drive going, and he got picked off in the end zone, and then he got picked off again for a pick six. And I don't remember the last time that a quarterback threw at least two in one game. But the Jets are it's just dour times for the Jets. I mean, a friend of mine covers them for one of the local papers, and we were actually kicking around the other night. This team is not going to be favored. Now, the number has moved here in this Thursday night game with Denver, so the last I saw was Pick'em. They might wind up being favored here. But outside of that, I don't see them being favored the rest of the year. And I think they're heading to 1-15 or 2-14. Then the question at year's end is, do they draft a quarterback and move Donald out the door? So I know that's a decision for 3-4 months down the line, but right now the Jets are a bad team. They don't have a lot of talent. The best player on the team already is their left tackle, the rookie Becton from Louisville, and the poor kid got hurt and got taken out in the first quarter in the Colts game last week. So the Jets are really a floundering operation, and let's face it, the Broncos haven't been all that much better. I mean, competitive in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago and lost a tough one to Tennessee opening Monday night of the season. But boy, Vic Fangio and company, they don't show me a lot. And like you said, Jim, the ratings for this Thursday night game are not exactly going to go through the roof.
Well, especially when you have, you got other things going on at the moment. And we have today was probably, if you're a baseball fan, this has got to be the greatest day in your life. 8 games in baseball. I got one on over there right now with the Cincinnati Reds in Atlanta. I have Cincinnati in this game, and I like the under as well. And right now it's 0-0 in the fourth. So it's and I also bet the first first 5 innings, which is a nice thing to do when you have good starting pitching. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the bad teams. We saw a pretty good. We thought would be a great game the other night against the Chiefs and with the Chiefs and the Ravens. And I don't quite understand this, but why do the odds makers and the public, at least a big majority of the public, feel that the Ravens are the better team and they make them a shorter price to win the Super Bowl than the Chiefs, the shorter price to win the conference than the Chiefs, and they make them a 3.5-point favorite at home, which is a big number when there's no fans. And why? What is going on that they make the Ravens the better team than the Chiefs? Because in my mind, they're not even close to being the better team.
Well, certainly based on the performance Monday night, that was really, I don't want to insult the Ravens because they still are a good team, but that was men against boys. I mean, after that first drive, when the Ravens marched down the field, 11-play drive, had to settle for the short Tucker field goal, I could see it through the TV screen, their body language, they were deflated that they didn't go right down the field and score a touchdown. And the Chiefs kind of kept everything on defense that drive in front of them, forced Baltimore to kick the field goal. And from that point on, I mean, it was just a beatdown. Mahomes, let's face it, he toyed with them. I mean, he threw passes from every arm angle, and he clearly looked like a $50 million a year quarterback if you can be a $50 million a year guy. And you're right, and I have to admit, I drank the Kool-Aid. I liked the Ravens Monday night. I thought part of my thinking was because last year they didn't get this matchup in the playoffs because the Ravens got picked off by Tennessee. I said, you know what, the Ravens are chomping at the bit. This game means a lot more to them. But there was no doubt that the Chiefs were clearly the better team. I think some of what you're talking about, Jim, with the odds for Super Bowl stuff, I think part of that maybe I'm wrong, but I think part of it that plays into it is, the Chiefs are, you would think going into the season in a tougher division. I mean, for the most part. I mean, you're thinking that the Chargers will be a little better, the Raiders going to be better. So maybe they felt navigating through 6 divisional games in the AFC West will be a little tougher for the Chiefs than it would be for the Ravens in the AFC North, and so maybe that shortens the odds. I don't know. But anyway, as far as on the play, we all saw for ourselves. I mean, it was really a no contest. I know the Ravens made a little bit of a run there, but once they did, the Chiefs answered right back. And again, Mahomes, it's really a lethal combination. I mean, Andy Reid is as sharp as a tack with the play calling. Mahomes makes every play from every angle. And there's so many playmakers on his team. There's speed, the adding the running back from LSU to this roster. I mean, it was like the icing, the cherry on top, and they're murderous. I mean, I know now. I mean, they're a touchdown favorite at home to the Patriots, and we know this is a different kind of Patriot team, but still, I mean, I guess my feeling right now is how do you go against the Chiefs the way they just look? I mean, they're deadly, and to me, even with Green Bay and Seattle off to great starts, undefeated, straight up and against the spread, the Chiefs look like the clear class of the league, and they certainly handed the Ravens their lunch the other night.
Well, I'll go back to the Super Bowl where the Niners had them beat for all but for 10 minutes, but Garoppolo, I thought, choked. And I maybe even the head coach choked with the play calling, but they came back. They won the Super Bowl. They got a lot of confidence. They've got solid. They're solid in every way. I mean, they're actually much more solid, of course, offensively than defensively. But I look at the Ravens and I like Lamar Jackson. I like their head coach, but in reality, Lamar is a wishbone quarterback, and until they have a solid, dependable, drop-back, short passing game, I don't think they're ever going to be great. They can beat up on the league. They play a lot of inferior teams. They'll beat them up, and they can be very competitive. When you talk about division, I mean, they got tough teams. Pittsburgh's a tough team. Cleveland could be a tough team. They're still developing. Cincinnati, they've got the kid there, and in a while they'll probably not this year, but that's a much tougher division in my mind than what the Chiefs have. The Chargers don't look that strong. Denver, I mean, they're playing tomorrow night, and they obviously, if they're an underdog to the Jets, they can't be very strong either. It's not. I think the odds makers and the public have been all screwed up with this Raven team, and they're very overrated compared to the Chiefs. But when it comes to the rest of the league, they've done extremely well. They haven't been able to beat the Chiefs, but so I think Chiefs are the number one team in the country at the moment, and barring major injuries, that's probably going to stay that way for quite a while.
Well, you know what? You go back, this Chiefs team really matured, I would say, about 10 weeks into last season. And I could be wrong, but I think they've covered 10 of their last 11 games dating back to last year. We know that through the postseason they made that run. It was funny. They got behind in those AFC games against Tennessee and Houston and just blew right past them. And as you said, they were on the ropes in the Super Bowl against the 49ers, and that long pass from Mahomes to Tyreek Hill changed everything. And you're right, Garoppolo and Shanahan, they didn't get the job done in the final minutes here. The Chiefs remind me a lot of teams I've seen over the years where they turn it on late in the year and then they go right into the next year, and that momentum seems to carry over. And I agree with you. I mean, I think they're the best team. But again, I'm looking at before the season started. I think more people thought the Raiders and Chargers were going to be, say, better than they are. And like you said, the Browns are probably a little bit better than people thought they were going to be. So I think, over the course of the first 3 weeks, we've had a little bit of change of heart, and I would agree with you. I mean, I would rather, if I was a team in the league, I'd rather be playing the AFC West teams, even if it meant the Chiefs twice a year, than the AFC North. But that being said, you got to look at one thing with Baltimore, and I mean, you start to say, is this a trend, a pattern, whatever? I mean, Lamar Jackson as a rookie was in that playoff game. They got in a big hole early, made a little bit of a rally, but never were going to win it. Last year, playoff game against Tennessee, gets behind, couldn't figure out how to attack Tennessee, lost that one. Now, this was not obviously a playoff game the other night against the Chiefs, but still, he got himself an early score after a long drive, and then they really just petered out. And when you look at his stats at the end of the game, I mean, you're talking an NFL quarterback that didn't even throw for 100 yards, and his team was behind most of the game. I mean, that's a little alarming. So I'm with you. I like Lamar Jackson as a player. I've told colleagues of mine that I think he's one of the 2 or 3 most exciting players I ever saw in college. Michael Vick was another guy that comes to mind, both quarterbacks that maybe ran better than they threw. But this is a little alarming now for the Ravens that they've had these 3, that I'm picking out, these high-profile games where they got behind. And whether you want to blame Lamar Jackson mostly or at least partly, and I'm not in love with the Ravens offensive coordinator either, Greg Roman, but for whatever the reasons are, and maybe you're right, maybe he's more of a wishbone quarterback, if you will, but they have not been able to make up deficits, and they've really, again, they've been like men against boys, the other teams against them. They just don't seem to be able to match up, and it's got to be troubling. I know they were talking the other night during the game, the announcers, about how important the game was for seeding and everything. I don't know with no fans in the stands if the home field means that much, but whether they're playing at home or on the road, the Ravens have to be concerned if and when they get in the playoffs this year, how they're going to react. When they get down, more than a touchdown, they don't seem to put much of a dent into the other team, and Lamar Jackson's passing doesn't scare a whole lot of people these days.
Well, let's do some rapid fire through some of these other games that are still meaningful. We're still only in the 4th week of the season. The Colts go to the Bears. The Bears have shifted. They made a comeback last week against the great Atlanta Falcons, who I can't understand how Quinn still has his job. The Colts blew their first game of the year, but they've looked pretty damn good since. They go to the Bears with Nick Foles now at the quarterback for the Bears, which I think is a major upgrade. And the Colts are 2.5-point favorite on the road at the Bears. I'll go through these things real quick. The Saints go to the Lions. The Saints have not looked good. Breeze does not look like he can throw the ball down the field. The Saints are 4.5 point favorite in that game. The Cardinals at the Panthers. Cardinals blew the game last week against Detroit at home. They go to the Carolina Panthers, who beat the, we just talked about the Chargers. They beat them on the road out in the West Coast, and now they're home as a dog. We're looking at some, if you follow the pattern here, we got some interesting home dogs this week. Jacksonville, they're on the road to Cincinnati, who got a tie last week against Philadelphia, which is a whole nother story. And Jacksonville with Minshew against Burrow. And surprisingly, the Bengals are actually a favorite in the game, which we probably didn't think we'd see too much of this year, and we won't. And then I've got the Browns at the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, of course, have had some tough games early in the season. Very fortunate to win against Atlanta. Almost played pretty well against Seattle. Played pretty well against the Rams as well early in the first week. They're a 4.5 point favorite over the Browns. The dangerous part to me in this game, and you could jump in any time, Joe, but the dangerous part to me for the Browns is if Dallas, not for the Cowboys, if the Browns and their coaching staff is smart enough to run their two backs and use a lot of play action and motion, they can make Baker Mayfield look a little bit better than he actually is. And that could be a very dangerous game for the Cowboys because this Brown team is not easy to knock off if they play the game the way it should be played with their talent. And that is not creating Baker as a drop-back passer. He needs to be off motion. He has to be play action. And they got to use those two backs to set him up.
Jim, I totally agree. I mean, everyone talked about, they were like a fantasy team people looked at the last year or two with all the different guys, Heisman guys, whatever, guys that were superstars in college, Odell Beckham. But you know what? You're right. They've got to have a balanced attack. It's going to take the heat off Mayfield. And Chubb and Hunt are big-time players, big time. Everyone knows that. But if they can get these guys the ball, I'm going to say 25 to 30 times running or on short pass plays, they take the heat off of Mayfield, and if he has a little time, he'll connect downfield with Beckham and company. I think the Cowboys, I think this is a very rough scheduling spot, too, for the Cowboys. You got to consider, I mean, they come off the Seattle game where, that was an emotional roller coaster type game, and if anyone had the Cowboys, they certainly deserved better because Seattle looked like they were setting up to kick a potential winning field goal, and then obviously Russell Wilson chucked it into the end zone for a touchdown, and that botched up a Cowboy play. And then the week before, like you said, they played the Falcons. So they've been on a real emotional seesaw for the last couple of weeks, and now they're home laying points, close to a handful of points to a Browns team that, again, if you believe in Stefanski, the coach, who a lot of people like, and they like the fact that he likes a balanced attack, you tell me right now you're going to get the running backs 30 carries between them, and Mayfield doesn't have to have the whole shoulder the load of a passing game. The Browns could be they could be what everyone thought they'd be last year. They could wind up being a 10-win team. It's not out of the question, and I think this is a very rough spot. In fact, it's probably a game that we're going to get involved in with the Jim Hurley Network. And so let me give a quick plug because we really like this NFL Week 4 card. 1-800-323-4453 is our toll-free number. Give us a call. Game day mornings, we'll get you the side and totals winners. We're certainly going to have some interest in some big Week 4 games. The Browns and Cowboys might be one of them. That's 1-800-323-4453. Jim Hurley Network. Don't forget to check in with us for the weekend.
All right, and you'll also have some college plays. We don't talk much about college on this podcast, but I know you like some college plays this weekend. So it is the Jim Hurley Network. And is that jimhurley.com? Is that the website address?
That's the website. They can also check in at vegassportsmaster.pro. Let me say that again. It's vegassportsmaster.pro. Check out that website. Check out the toll-free number, 800-323-4453. 4-4-5-3.
Okay, we can move on. If there's some of the other games that we passed over, we can go back. The Vikings this week are in a very strange situation. They played the Titans last week, and the Titans had some players test positive. I think 3 players, maybe 4, and then some other people on the staff also. So their game with Pittsburgh, Titans game with Pittsburgh, has been suspended until Monday or Tuesday because of the COVID issue. But the problem there is the Vikings played them, and so they've kind of been in a semi-quarantine issue. Practice time and everything's been cut. So the Vikings are really going to not be fully prepared because I guess they're going to be doing Zoom practice, which is not quite the same. And they've been out of sync anyway. Both the Titans and the Texans are 0-3. But I think that does give the Texans a little bit of an advantage. And we've seen some numbers come back up. Not everywhere, but where the Texans were 3.5, they're now 5. And you got to remember, this Viking team has not played well. They did cover last week in a tough loss, but they've kind of been out of sync, but then the Texans also have not played all that well. So this is kind of a special set of circumstances. I'm not going to delve too much into it because I don't really know how to handicap that situation. Seattle has had Russell Wilson is unbelievable. There's nobody playing quite at that level and probably never have for the number of touchdown passes he's thrown in 3 games. They're 3-0. They're on the road. They're going to Miami, who just came off the Thursday night win. Not that they played anybody great, but Miami has a situation this time of year. It is late September or October. Very hot and humid in Miami. Most teams are not used to that, and Seattle would be one of them because it's cooler in Seattle. It rains, but it's not as humid as you get in Miami, and the temperatures are much different. They're going down there, and it's Seattle at Miami, and Miami is a 6.5-point underdog. 54 or 54.5 is the total. The question here is, can Seattle come off these tough games that they played the last 2 weeks alone, the Patriots and Dallas, and very tough games, and now they got to go down to Miami, and you never know what you're going to get with the bearded monster, Fitzmagic, but boy, I tell you, at times he can look like magic. He can do some great things, but there's also times when he'll come out and throw 6 interceptions.
That's true. And, you and I both like, the fact that the Dolphins are kind of trending up. We like what they did last year as the season went on. Let's face it, the beginning of last year, if people remember, everyone was talking about them tanking for Tua. Well, they still wound up getting Tua as their quarterback of the future, but they played pretty well down the stretch. And head coach Brian Flores gets a tip of the cap from me. They really played hard. They seem to like him. And, there's a little bit more talent on this Dolphins team than I think we realize. I mean, they've drafted okay the last couple of years, and they've got some good young talent. They made a couple of nice pickups in free agency in the summer. So their team is filling out a little bit. And I agree with you, Jim. It's a very tough spot for the Seahawks. So they're one of 2 teams, along with Green Bay, to be 3-0 spread-wise to start this season. And, Russell Wilson just keeps bailing them out, it seems like, time after time. But this is a rough spot. They're flying. I would gather this is the longest trip you can make in the NFL from Seattle to Miami or vice versa. So they're making that trip, and they're doing it coming off a couple of really emotionally charged games, and they have a Sunday night game next week. Now, granted, it's against Minnesota, so it's not a total high-profile winning team these days, but still, this game kind of falls in there and might fall in between the cracks and be very problematic for the Seahawks. And you and I both agree, obviously anyone can see it, the defense is not nearly what they were in those Super Bowl years, but boy, they let some guys run wide open. I mean, I know Cedric Wilson is not a household name for the Cowboys, but boy, they let him go down the sideline a couple of times like he was, a Sunday jog. And Seattle's got to be concerned. I don't think they get enough pass rush pressure. Their secondary is wobbly, and they got Jamal Adams hurt the other day. He didn't play much of the second half with a groin injury, so I would expect him to be out here the way he was limping around there. So, this could be a difficult spot for the Seahawks. This might be one of those games that comes right down to the wire. So I'm looking a little bit at the Dolphins now, but I want to examine a little bit more. I want to get a little feel. The only problem I have with the Dolphins here is, as I was saying to you off the air, to me they played like an A or an A-plus game in beating Jacksonville last Thursday night. I don't always trust what I consider bad or average teams to play their A game back-to-back weeks. That's the only thing holding me back right now from endorsing them. But I'm going to be certainly looking at this game, and I could see Seattle putting up 30 points. That might not be enough to get the cover here, though. So it's an interesting game, Week 4 game. And again, I know people are going to talk about the body clock, West Coast team, but I don't think that's meant all that much so far. And just to throw one stat at you, again, without fans in most of these buildings, the home teams so far through 3 weeks are a dead even 24-24 against the spread. So not that there's been any big home field advantage in recent years. We've seen it devolve in the last couple of years where road teams have done fine. But right now, we're dead even, big losing. If you just playing every home team, you're 24-24, which is obviously nothing special.
No, absolutely. The biggest the thing we didn't talk enough about possibly is not only did Miami has a little extra rest. They got 10 days because they came off Thursday, and Seattle played the late game and one of the later afternoon games last week against Dallas. So you're talking about a big advantage in resting and practice, and there's a lot of side issues here that benefit Miami. The question with Miami is they do have an inconsistent quarterback that can look like the best in the business one day, and a guy that doesn't look like he got out of high school the next time out. But for the most part, the last 8 or 10 games that he has played, he's actually been pretty good when you go back to last year. So, moving on. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to take on the Chargers. And Tampa Bay seems to be rounding into some kind of form now. Godwin was going to be out. But Tom Brady is new system, new players, new coach. They're a 7 or 7.5 point home favorite over the Chargers, who travel west to east in this game.
I think you're right. I mean, the Bucs are showing a little more substance, a little consistency. The first week, Brady, I think, took too much heat. I mean, he threw a pick six in the Saints game the opening week and did not look great. But, I mean, you can't jump down his throat. I mean, like every other NFL team, they really didn't have any source of stuff to learn from in the summer with the COVID situation. I mean, he didn't get to know his teammates as well and all that stuff. But they looked solid last week against Denver. And you know what? I mean, they're going to be a tough team to play, and not to say just here, but I mean, they're getting a lot of respect right away in the number. I mean, this is a fairly hefty number. And the Chargers, I tell you what, they may not be happy with their record so far. They certainly cannot be happy with how they played against Carolina last week. But the signs point upward. This quarterback from Oregon, I think, is going to be better than I thought he was going to be, Herbert. He shows some real, toughness. He's taken a few monster hits already. He doesn't seem to faze him. He's a pretty accurate thrower. You know what? I like what I see so far. Now, the Chargers themselves, I mean, who knows? To me, they're always a flip of the coin type of team, week in and week out. They seem to make enough mistakes to lose close games. I mean, the Phillip Rivers era is over there, obviously, but in all those years that Rivers played, it seemed like so many Charger games went down to the last minute or two. So many of them, they came up short. And that's the kind of team I think they're going to have this year. But if they have anything to be encouraged about, it's this rookie quarterback. But again, you're traveling east, a little banged up, and facing a Buck team that's starting to get its heads together. Gronkowski got a little involved in the game the other day. And if the Bucs show the defense that they played the other day, now that was against Driscoll and a really novice Denver offense. But if the Bucs show, consistent, solid defense, then I might change my tune saying they shouldn't be laying 7 points or more. But the jury's still out on their defense. I want to see a little bit more consistency from that unit, but I have no doubt their offense is going to percolate as the season goes along.
We got the Giants, one of your favorite teams to talk about. We talked earlier how bad they are. They go to the Rams. Rams, controversial loss last week with a call at the end of the game. They were down big. They came back. They took the lead. But they lost to Buffalo in a game that a lot of people are arguing about the one call. But moving on to the Patriots and Chiefs, we just saw what the Chiefs did to the Ravens, and the Patriots, of course, have been very impressive so far. And Cam Newton, he's the brand new quarterback replacing Brady, but you got Bill Belichick, and you go Bill Belichick against Andy Reid. This is a very, very interesting game. The line is 7, 6.5 or 7. The Chiefs against the Patriots. This is probably the marquee game of the day for me.
That's for sure. And you know what? We've talked a lot in this show right now about extra rest or whatever. And again, the Patriots, okay, they played last Sunday, so they're on a Sunday-to-Sunday schedule, but the Chiefs have the shorter week. They had been in Baltimore for that game. So you'd have to think in that regard, advantage to the Patriots. And, the Patriots have really bonded together. I was reading up a lot of stuff on their game from the other day, and Rex Burkhead had a big game out of the backfield, 3 touchdowns. He ran the ball well, was a nice short target for Cam Newton. They've really rallied around their good friend, running back James White, who lost his father in an accident a couple of weeks ago, and the mother injured. Terrible story and everything, but they've really seemed to rally around him. He's a central part of that team. We know was a Super Bowl great, and so they've got a bit of a rallying cry here. And tell you what, Newton is looking comfortable in this offense. I mean, he's picking and choosing some receivers. The offensive line's playing pretty well in front of him, and they're always dangerous. We know that, but again, the Chiefs are kind of otherworldly right now. I mean, right now, like I said, despite the fact you've got 6 other teams that are undefeated in this league, the Chiefs are head and shoulder pads, to me, better than the next best team. So it's all stuff to consider. Obviously, no big thing in terms of crowd noise or anything at Arrowhead Stadium. So I wonder if maybe the number is inflated a little bit for the home field, even though fans won't matter. But, hey, the Patriots are a solid team. They're one of the probably 6, 7 best teams in the league. But to me, the Chiefs are number 1 with a bullet, and tough game to call. We'll see if we're going to get involved for the Jim Hurley Network. But a lot of people are going to knee-jerk reaction, grab Belichick plus points, which is fine. But like I said, the Chiefs are covered 10 of their last 11 under Andy Reid. So they're not exactly... you've got to earn it. If you're going to cover against the Chiefs these days, you're going to earn it.
Well, that's for sure. The next game I find interesting, you got the Bills, who 3-0 on the year against the Raiders, who've played pretty well so far this year. They did lose last week, as I had hoped they would, against the Raiders, or against the Patriots, I should say. But early in the game, they played pretty well, and then perhaps fatigue got them later because they had the short week and a travel back east, so that might have helped a little bit. And there's a lot of factors that, of course, go into the play, and of course, the halftime adjustments that Bill Belichick makes are second to none. He knows what he's doing, needless to say. But the Bills are 2.5-point favorite at the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, my hometown here, and the Bills are favored on the road.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that. I guess I thought it would be more like a pick-em line here. I tell you what, the Bills, let's face it, they've got to love Josh Allen's play this year. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's thrown the ball very well. He's had a little problem with some turnovers, and he had a little problem with his temper the other day. He got a big 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty, which was really at a key juncture of that game against the Rams. But the Bills are solid. I mean, a lot of people thought they were going to win the AFC East this year. I saw it coming last year. I didn't know if they would be able to match that 10-win season, but they're heading that way. But I'm a little surprised by the by the number here. I guess the big question with the Raiders is, when you're dealing with Carr, I mean, some people love him, some don't love him as much quarterback. I've always thought that surround him with the right people and give him some help in the running game, which they have now with Jacobs, and he can be a star player in this league. I think this is a total toss-up game for the most part. I respect what the Bills are doing so far. I have to chime in here as far as that call last week, the pass interference on the Rams. I would say that 99 out of 100 times, if that play happened in the first three quarters of a game, it would be called. It would be called pass interference. The fact that it happened, to save the Bills' backsides, made it such a big story. But I have to admit, when I saw it live and I saw several replays, I said, listen, for the most part, this is called, especially in this league where offense and passing is the signatures of this league. They're not going to help a defensive guy. So I know the Rams are upset, but bottom line is I think it was a penalty. But that being said, the Bills really played with fire last week, and they've played that way a little bit through the first three games this year. So I have to say that if they wind up getting in a spot here and they get a little sloppy, or they get some penalties, or Allen has a couple of red zone turnovers, the small underdog Raiders are certainly ripe to beat them.
Well, Joe, I appreciate your time today, and this is great going over these games. Is there anything else? We do have baseball, and I don't know if you have an interest in talking about that, but we have eight games today. I've got a couple of them on right now, and matter of fact, it's Bauer against Fried. We got nothing. They're pitching great. And
now, today is just a great menu of games. Like you said, it's like a March Madness day for baseball fans today. It's a great card, and I looked over a lot of the series prices, and I have to admit, before the series start, the two that I really liked were the Yankees and the Reds. The Reds, like you said, they're in a 0-0 game right now. The Yankees looked great last night, and those are for whatever it's worth, those are my World Series matchups. The fifth-seeded Yankees and the seventh.
Are you there, Joe? I think we lost Joe. Yeah, we lost Joe. All right, well, I'll close it off. Jim Hurley Network, go there, Vegas Sports Master, also .pro, and take a look at Joe's stuff. He's very good at what he does, good handicapper, and we also added him to the JimFeist.com site, so you can get his picks there as well. But we got disconnected somehow. I don't know how that happened, but we'll terminate this now, and thank you for listening.